Right, our next speaker will speak in Portuguese. So if you do not speak Portuguese, you can get a device to translate and interpret for you live right there at the desk behind you. Right, and social at heart. Fiat and Chrysler is indeed as well social at heart. And to tell us about their four strategies for social media in Brazil and beyond, here's Joao Ciaco, Head of Advertising and Relationship Marketing Director for Fiat and Chrysler. Joao, bem-vindo.
Good morning, bom dia.
Good morning. Since we have simultaneous translation, I'm going to be speaking in Portuguese because in 10 minutes I will have to speak very fast. I wanted to tell you a little bit from the point of view of Fiat. How do we understand the work of social media, of content, the storytelling, how it has been so positive so we can build our marketing story. We wanted to talk a little bit about the movements here to this point. Let's talk about the 4 ways in which we can get to Fiat today as a direction in order to do the branding. We leave from the universe of the brand as a punctual activity, and we put in certain values that bring us ideas. This movement allows us in some way to allow us the consumer and the mass consumer and how this content is built and how this new relationships are built. We have to leave relations there, strictly consumer relations. Sometimes we even try not to talk about the consumer relations, but to talk about other relationships with social, cultural, effective, that will make sense for an effective and positive communication that we want to create. In this new era, what I like to call a position turned inside to the ego, to the outside position. This is hard to do. All our processes, our brand processes, our process turned inwards, turned to individual relationships. Our customer servers between the brand and somebody else. When we make public our relationships, we make these movements not all anymore turned inwards and make different and make the branding more relevant and the communication finally takes place. If you have a basis for the movement and we understand it this way, we need to look at our history at Fiat. In Argentina, it's even a longer history than in Brazil, is a relationship built from this relationship. Fiat arrived at the region bringing for the new cars, technology that were available only in the higher segments, and then the brand has the accessibility, the proximity as a main characteristic. I think this made in our DNA, this made things a lot easier, so we recover a little bit of what we were, of our history, of what we can do. I see then from this branding work 4 directions for our social media and for the directions that social media must have. The first one is, it refers to content. We have talked a lot about this already. In the previous talk, we talked about building content. We all look, of course, for this, but what I can't see, and perhaps I won't see very soon, is an integrated content strategy. We see a lot of initiatives based on content, but if you look, we have many seminars, media seminars. If we look at our way of buying media, of planning media, of relating to media, we have to first think of media to build on top of it of a structure plan. It's hard to think before an entire content and then try to see how the media can be realized, the best way to arrive to the consumer. So it's a very major movement that we're doing right now. isolated actions, the isolated projects are very relevant, but an integrated thinking of content as a driving initiative for marketing is something that we're still developing and will certainly nurture our way of acting from now on. A second movement that we almost were in a shock before we started was to don't fear the lack of control, and think of engagement as the main factor. When we built our concept car, the concept car is an exercise in future. It's when you think about how the design is going to be, what the materials are going to be employed, what the technologies are going to be employed for the future car. So it's an exercise done internally in the company. It's an exercise done at home, so to speak. So when we built our concept car in 2010, instead of doing the exercise internally, we decided to open up and do an open platform and design this car in a different way, which was something very different for this industry. The car industry is the most conservative industry that I've ever worked in, that I have contact with. So to think this car jointly, it was something very special. It was how the hierarchies were to be considered, decisions made, how we attract the consumer. And this taught us a lot to build this car jointly, and also how we prepare departments to talk to the consumers, how we do this in a relevant manner for the company as a group. Fiat today is different from Fiat 20,000, and the other brands were also, from now on, were based on this perception. A third point that I think is that when you think from the engagement to make a complete offer, you have to not only look behind, but look for the future, for the things we're going to be designing in the future. The car, Mille, taught us that you have to have online actions, social media actions connected to personal activities. But the first thing that we saw when we get the internet in Brazil or Argentina and other countries in Latin America is very similar. In Brazil, we have 7 million visitors a month. Almost 80% of them will build their cars in a car through a car configurator. This is a very individual, solitary experience, and it's very important. People go to the dealer and try to build their cars, but in their own way. But it's an individual exercise. What we saw ahead of us in the relationships and the conversations with the consumers is that nobody buys a car alone. It cannot be an individual experience. So, is to take the experience from the site to Facebook was to make so that this a relevant experience to the consumer is an experience lived jointly. The consumer can divide, can share its choices, it can share with everybody. This was very important, and for ahead. Fiat Fundo, which we are seeing in the screen right now, the experience of that the car is connected to all the property. This 5 years ago, it was connected to the entire property. Then the person could see the emails, the postings, etc., and able to do the connection. The last movement, I think it's relevant and helps us to build this marketing experience relates to innovation. The innovation maybe is one of the greatest difficulties, to be able to manage the innovation experience that they're built in my point of view, outside the mainstream, outside the main business is built on the periphery. How to bring the periphery, the peripheral ideas back in. This is the great advancement of innovation. That's what we did with the live store. That was thought out not inside of Fiat, but in the agency, with the dealers, how to experiment the car online. It's a demo on live to see how the consumer can see quickly the product, how it is. It's a very important experience. I think it changes the way to present the product. It changes the way the brand relates, and it's recognized as very, very important. So www.fiatlifestore.com. Just to finish, because our time is up, what is coming? What's the next steps? I wouldn't be able to tell you that there's no directions. But I know a few ways ahead. We have to more and more leave just a branding approach to see how the brand can be more relevant. Perhaps the example when we created the campaign for the World Cup and for the Cup of the Confederations, how we left the branding experience to experience with the consumer. So I just showed this video to finish.
The World Cup in Brazil. The dream of more than 119 million Brazilians. But reserved for 60,000 people at each stadium and for very few brands. Fiat, a brand that has always been at Brazilian side, had the same feeling of being left out of the party. So, instead of a campaign, we launched a movement, calling all to cheer in the most democratic of places, and which Fiat knows better than anyone else, capable of receiving the entire country. And the first to join us was Falcão. Within just a few days, the call spread. It reached all the TV channels, magazines, and newspapers of the country. It became the most watched car video in the history of Brazil. One of the most requested songs on the radio.
Meu, som muito legal. Por que vocês não rolam mais na programação?
Mais ainda?
Sai de casa, vem pra rua, pra maior arquibancada do Brasil.
Our hashtag reached more than 300,000 mentions. It became the campaign that the people elected for the World Cup, placing Fiat ahead of even some official sponsors. A hashtag, a song. The chant Vem pra rua became a major national topic. It even drew the attention of the international media.
Bom, eu acho que a população se apropriou dessa música e transformou num hino.
And Fiat, who wanted to be a part of a historic moment in football, ended up playing a part in the country's history.
Muito obrigado.
Ciao, muito obrigado.
Yep.
Accompagna aqui un momento.
Thanks.